All right, what is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the Mets Weekly Podcast as we are live at this very moment on YouTube and on X to recap the Mets versus Tigers series, as well as all the latest news and rumors in New York Mets land. But before we get into that, I want to remind everyone to subscribe to the Mets Weekly YouTube channel for new episodes of our show that are recorded live after every single series of regular season games. For those of you watching or listening on playback, you want to join the conversation in the future, make sure to turn on those post notifications to know when we go live. For those of you in the live chat right now, we love reading your comments, your questions, your concerns, all that great stuff. If you feel like you're being ignored, you're not being ignored, you're just being starred throughout the show. You'll try to pull up as many as we can to keep the flow of the conversation going. Make sure to follow Mets Weekly on X and on TikTok, which mainly features my co-host Frank's instant post-game reactions after every single regular season game, which are titled the Mets Frankly Post-Game. For our audio listeners, make sure to follow us on all your favorite listening platforms to not miss the audio version of new episodes that go up at 9 a.m. the following day. Also, make sure to give us a 5-star review. It would be greatly appreciated. So without further ado, let's get into episode number 166 of our show. Now, you may notice that if you're watching live right now, you may notice on the screen we've got some empty boxes. That means that some special guests will be joining us today. This duo has been on our show many times before. They were last here for our trade deadline special live stream back in the end of July. So please help us welcome back Evan and Matt from the Mets Central podcast. Great to have you guys back on here. We are talking about a team in a different state than we did the last time. So it's a lot different, but still plenty to unpack. So, Evan, I guess I'll go to you first.
Yeah, I think the last time we were on here for like a series recap, if I'm not wrong, I think it was the Pirates series after they got swept. So definitely a lot
Yeah.
different of a tone for the most part. I mean, there's still some similar concerns, unfortunately, from back then to now with certain things, mostly with the starting pitching, just not giving enough volume. The good news is at least that they have some young pitchers that you can look forward to every 5 to 6 days, one of them being called up, which I'm sure we'll talk about as well. But yeah, definitely a lot better of a tone compared to the last time we broke down a series.
Yeah. Matt, you also were here. I think, if my records stand correctly here, yeah, we went for a Pittsburgh Pirates series, and I think the Mets won that series. It was the one that
Yeah.
they played at home, and then there was another one where they just got completely washed out of
That's right,
Pittsburgh,
it
which
was
was
the
a little
home
bit
series.
later. Yeah, so and I remember it being kind of underwhelming where I think they won that series and still got outscored. But as of right now, that's not the condition. Matt, I think you can agree. I mean, the offense is starting to play to some potential that we expected, I don't know, in day one.
Yeah, look, I mean, of course, it's always good to be back. And as always, make sure you guys, subscribe to, Mets Weekly as always. Make sure you show Carson, Frank, and Andrew when he's here support. And also, our channels on Met Central. And even if you guys are hockey fans, which I'm sure everyone is excited for hockey to come back a couple weeks away. So make sure to subscribe to Rangers Central as well. But yeah, look, 22 more games, right? It's the final little home stretch before the postseason. And look for the Mets. Look, the past couple months they've had like two really bad stretches of baseball, which we were both just sitting here and not happy at all watching them just fumble huge leads in both the division race and then the wild card race. But they started to pick it up a little bit. Obviously, pitching wise on the veteran side, not great. I'm sure we'll talk about both Shamanaya, Kodai Senga, and Clay Holmes, even David Pearson to a certain extent because he got just destroyed in his last start. On the positive side, though, the youngsters have come up. Noel McLean, first 4 starts, 4 wins. He's looked excellent. Jonah Tong in his first start, where he made his major league debut. Obviously, me and Evan were in attendance for that, and yeah, he looked really good. And obviously, we got the big news today that Brandon Sproat's going to make his major league debut on Sunday in Cincinnati. So hopefully, he goes out there and has a good start. And yeah, look, like you said, Carson, the offense has been a bit better. Obviously, Juan Soto has really picked it up, and I'm not sure if he's going to win the MVP because obviously Otani and Schwarber are the two leading candidates right now, but he's making a late case for it. Pete Alonso, he had a decent series. Mark Vientos over the last couple of weeks, he's really picked up the slack. So yeah, look, the offense has looked better. I'm still not fully bought into the offense just because we've seen them have these stretches where they look hot, and then all of a sudden you give it a couple weeks and then they just completely disappear for a long periods of time. So we'll see what happens. But ultimately, like I said, for me, these next two series coming up, both against the Reds and the Phillies, to me, these are the two biggest series of the season so far, because you have a chance right now to give yourself some serious space between you and the Reds and try to really cement your spot for the last wild card spot. And then even though for the Phillies, look, the division probably looks out of hand right now and it doesn't look like they're going to win the division, but at least put some more doubt in the head of the Philadelphia Phillies and really cement your spot to where the Phillies, whenever they come up against you, they're nervous and they get the jitters. And because for whatever reason the Mets just always seem to have the Phillies number over these last couple of years. But yeah, great to be back on with you guys.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think that right now we're in a point where this table is kind of set for them, even though there has been plenty of things that we think that they can do better. But I do believe that, obviously Cincinnati, they have a chance to pretty much bury them upcoming. And then they also have Phillies coming up where, who knows, maybe it is within 4 games and you could try and go head to head with them and try to catch up with the division. We're not sitting here hopeful for it, because obviously head-to-head matchups aren't the only thing that would obviously solve that, but the Mets have done well with the Phillies. So again, things need to go well. Obviously, the Mets still have to execute, which has been the main problem, the main question mark that we have seen all year, is if they actually can do something and actually execute the right way, then they will actually be able to win these games, and we win these games in convincing fashion. But I think right now there still are very noticeable concerns in some departments on this team that could be something that does kill them. We will talk about some things that have been of concern. But again, they go into Detroit and they win this series convincingly. Would have been nice to sweep it, but they did win convincingly, scoring 22 runs in those first 2 games, with the offense continuing to stay hot, coming off of a series with the Miami Marlins where they lost 3 out of 4. And this was basically what I kind of expected when I said this last episode when we went live with Frank. I said, it makes sense that the Mets would win this series compared to what they did with Miami, because for some reason, when there's teams that have absolutely nothing to play for some reason the Mets just struggle so much to do something. It's better to beat the better teams, obviously, because you're going to face those better teams in the playoffs. But when you see things like this, where they beat up a Tigers team that we know is good and is going to be in the postseason this year, compared to a Marlins team that maybe is a little bit better and is no slouch as compared to what they've been in the last recent years, but it comes to a point of like, okay, this team needs to stop screwing around. Because if they did just win half of the games they lost against these teams that have no business beating them, they'd be in a much better spot. They probably would be in first place in this division right now. Like that's kind of how it feels. And the best case scenario here, and even though it's kind of an outside thought, is I would love to win this division, and I would love to play Philly at Citi Field in the wild card round. I would love for that to happen, because as of right now, that's a house of horrors for them. So even though, usually we don't get our wish, I'm still, I'm hopeful that maybe they can gain ground on it. I'm not crossing my fingers, but I feel confident enough that they can play good enough baseball to at least make the postseason, especially when you see guys like Juan Soto hitting the way that he is as of right now. And also the rest of the lineup that has seemed to heat up as well and pick up the slack of other guys who maybe have had some tough games or had some tough this or that. Obviously, we're saying this off of a game where they didn't have the best offensive performance, but it's been better. And I think that you guys can definitely agree to at least the offense changing its culture, changing it to a different level compared to what we saw for the first few months.
Yeah, the offense has definitely been better. But back to your point about beating up on the bad teams, the thing that just has frustrated me the most throughout this season is, and I talked about it, and I think I titled it for the last podcast episode, is that this team has been 1 step forward, 2 steps back all year long. And it's like anytime you think they're going to start to gain traction, get momentum going in their way to where you're going to start to see consistency, it all of a sudden just turns into them losing to these bad teams, like the National Series, for example, that series that they should have won as well, because you win that series and even you win the Marlins series. I don't know where they'd line up in terms of how many games back from Philly, but you're probably really close to Philly right now to where we could actually have the conversation about winning the division. But instead, it's what you said, where they're screwing around too much. And that's what worries me, because right now, the thing that I'm concerned about the most is not it, like above anything else, is just seeing consistent baseball played going into October. Because what I've said time and time again is I don't care about what you did in May, June, July if you right the ship when it matters the most in September. The problem is what you said, some of the tendencies are still there. You're not getting liked from the veteran starting pitchers like Matt was talking about before. There are still some games where defensively they're not crisp enough. There are certain times where the manager, I'm still questioning decisions that he's making, like in yesterday's game, putting Helsley into the 1-run ball game. And it's like, some of these things need to turn around. And then, even with the offense, the one thing I'll say, and this is definitely nitpicking a little bit because they have been better, but it is a little worrisome to me that in that Marlins series, the one game they didn't show up was against Sandy. In this series, granted, Casey Mize isn't a world beater, but that was the best pitcher they faced this series, and they struggled offensively. So it is something to, monitor as we go through when they face quality pitchers.
Yeah, obviously, I think we're in a situation where whether we're playing the matchups or not, we know that they are capable of hitting any level of pitching. We know that they are. And again, there's wasted moments and there's wasted opportunities that we feel like they could have got a little bit more. I think on the offensive side, we're seeing double-digit performances a lot more than we were. And I don't know if it gives us a feeling of, this is great, that we're in a good position, or it gives us a feeling of, where has this been for months? Like, where has this been for months? You could have been in a better position than that. Now, again, speaking of, the context of where the Mets are at right now, again, they have a chance to be in a good position going into Philly, because Philly right now is playing Milwaukee today, and they end up, it could be a 4.5 game lead. Could there be something else? I don't know who Philly plays next, but let's see. Who does Philly play next? I'm not sure. They probably play they play Miami. So again, it's basically just hoping that Miami can steal a game there. But again, that type of hopium mentality is the main reason as to why they are in this certain situation where they're only 10 games over 500, and they're just kind of floating around. And I feel like there still is more that can be provided. However, the bats as of right now have been carrying the huge the huge task recently, which has been good because they are playing like the expensive offense that we have expected them to play like for a while. And I think that that's the main reason as to why there is a little bit more confidence as of right now. But I do have a very big worry postseason time, or with the upcoming postseasons of what really usually happens in the postseason. Sometimes you get blowouts or not. I do have a little bit of a concern with, obviously, the bullpen struggling a lot. A lot of the additions struggling a lot. We'll get into one of them who has been god-awful. The rotation having a really rough time going deep into games, whether you have some of the youngsters taking care of that, you can't bank on it. I don't know if this team can play a close game right now. I don't know if it's possible this team can play a close game of baseball. They're going to need their offense to basically pop off for double-digit runs every single game, and that's not going to happen when you're facing this elite pitching in the postseason. You may get lucky with some matchups, but again, I do have that type of concern. I don't know, Matt, I can swing it back to you. I don't know if you have that sort of concern where this team, it seems like you can't trust the bullpen. You can't trust the starting pitching to go deep into games. The only thing that you can trust is Soto, Lindor, and Alonso having ridiculous games in order for them to win these games. And that's the main reason as to why I have that concern. I've had that concern probably for this entire second half.
Yeah, no, even and even just to go back a little bit and jump on the whole like inconsistency issues. Like Evan a couple days ago on one of the post game streams said he really doesn't have a feel on how to feel about this team, whether they're a good team, they're a bad team, whether you want to buy in or whether you kind of want to be hesitant. And for me, I'm kind of at this point where the Mets are a good team, but they have clear inconsistency issues. And this is why for me, like over the past couple weeks where, we see them, sweep the Phillies. And to me, like I was happy that they swept the Phillies, but I wasn't fully ready to get excited yet. And then we see them play against the Marlins. They dropped 3 out of 4. And I'm sitting here and I'm not really shocked because, we've seen this with this group over the past couple of years. They are very capable of, playing up the competition, but also playing down the competition. And this is something because I know we all love the 2024 team from last year, and they made that deep run last year. But let's not forget the 2024 team had the same problem where they would play down the competition because let's not forget they lost the series last year to the A's. They got swept. They got swept last year by the Seattle Mariners when the Mariners weren't as good of a team as they were last year. But then you would see this team go in beat the Phillies, beat the Orioles when they were good last year, and you're like you kind of don't know how exactly to feel. And then even to go on to your point of Carson. Yeah, listen, this team right now, they can't play in close games. It's not like at the beginning of the year, where the offense was struggling and, the pitching was really carrying them. And, we saw, lights up performances from, multiple guys in the bullpen, whether it be from Brazaban, from Garrett, from Kranick, even though Diaz struggled a little bit, you had other guys picking him up. But, right now, it's like, cool, the offense is picking you up and you're scoring a ton of runs. But then, like, for example, in their first game, the offense goes off. You see Juan Soto hitting his first grand slam of the season, his first grand slam as a Met, and you really can't get too comfortable because here comes Sean Manaea back on the mound, and he's automatically giving up, 3-4 runs to tie up the game. And then, you see this bullpen right now, and, you see guys like Gregory Soto come out. He's not been able to be effective. Tyler Rogers has been okay. He's had some games where he's looked good and a couple other games where, he hasn't looked good. But I think that's just more like what me and Evan have talked about. It's more about situational, where you put Tyler Rogers in, because you put Tyler Rogers in a game where there's no one on base, he looks good. But then you bring him into a situation where there's runners on base and he's, susceptible to, to small contact, and boom, that's where you can see multiple runs come across. And then obviously, the big one, which we're going to talk about more, is just Ryan Helsley. And look, obviously, like I said, we're going to talk about that more, but the guy right now is he's unpitchable. And for me, especially, when you're going to this final, stretch of baseball, the last 22 games, and you're seeing the Mets have series against the Reds, the Phillies, the Cubs, the Padres, even the Marlins, which is the last series of the season, you can't trust this guy at all to pitch in those situations. And, sure, they have a couple off days, but, most of these guys are going to have to be used. It's not like you can have 1 or 2 spots in your bullpen where, where it's just basically a cheerleading role, because the Mets already have Ryan Stanek for that. And, when you're, like I said, when you're going to these last couple stretches, you can't afford to have 2 spots in your bullpen where you're afraid to use them. So eventually it's like, we know that Stanek is probably not going to go anywhere. I mean, if he has a big cut to this point, then he's just staying here like what we saw from Adam Ottavino last year. But with Helsley, it's like you have to make a decision at some point, because obviously, there is the whole tipping pitches issue. But, if it's a tipping pitching issue, why hasn't that been fixed yet? Is it injury? I don't think so. Oh, my camera just went out. But he's still throwing high velo, so I don't think it's really an injury thing. I don't know what the problem is with Helsley personally. Like I said, we're going to talk about that more. But it's just the guy is unpitchable, and it's one of the main reasons, like what you said, Carson, that this team can't play in close games.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he was brought in for that certain role. We know that Rogers were brought in for these ground ball situations with the amount of base runners that these guys can allow and things like that. But it comes down to this from Daniel Capps here, and he's saying it's pathetic when 7 runs isn't enough. And that's the main reason as to why we have like this whole concern of every single game seems to be this home run derby at this point for this team because nobody can find a way to hold the lead. Even if we are talking about Tyler Rogers, he's had a few rough outings as well. I've not really been someone who's, I've not been someone who has really got on him as much compared to what we have also had also in the bullpen as well. We know that Reed Garrett is down, who was not very, very, very effective before getting hurt. Gregory Soto, I mean, brought in to face lefties, can't get his matchup out. It can't happen whatsoever. And then obviously Ryan Helsley. So, we'll obviously break down every single thing that went on in this series. And of course, that means that I have to take a sip of water because that means that I got to run down everything that happened in this Detroit series. For this series win, this game-changing, culture-changing series win. Anyways, we'll start off obviously with game one. Sean Manaea made the start, and he'd struggle once again to go deep into the game after surrendering a home run on the first pitch he threw and a 2-run homer in the third inning. He'd pitch into the fourth inning, getting only 2 outs, exiting after an RBI triple by Zach McKinstry and an RBI single by Jeremiah Jones. Gregory Soto would come on and strand Manaea's base runner to close the book on Manaea. 3 2/3 innings pitched, 8 hits, 5 earned runs, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts on 83 pitches. Down 1-0 in the second, the Mets offense would respond after a leadoff hit by pitch to Mark Vientos and a single by Jeff McNeil. Cedric Mullins would move them over with a sacrifice bunt, and Luis Torrens would give the Mets the lead with a 2-run single, down 3-2 in the fourth. Jeff McNeil would lead off with a double, followed by a walk to Cedric Mullins and a bloop single by Luis Torrens to load the bases. Juan Soto would launch his 36th home run of the year, a grand slam, his first non-solo or non-2-run shot of the season, giving the Mets a 6-3 lead. That would be cut to 6-5 after Manaea's exit, and Gregory Soto would come back out for the fifth. He'd only get 1 out sandwich in between singles to make it first and third. Mendoza would pull him for Ryan Stanek, who would allow one of Soto's base runners to score on a wild pitch to tie the game at 6. The Mets would respond in the 6th inning with a lead-off single by Luis Torrens and a 1-out hit by pitch to Francisco Lindor. Juan Soto would drive both of them in with an RBI triple, his first triple of the year, to put the Mets ahead by 2. Brandon Nimmo would add on with an RBI single to make it 9-6 Mets. Tyler Rogers would toss a scoreless inning in the 6th inning, working around a leadoff bunt single. In the 7th, Jeff McNeil would lead off by reaching on an error. Luis Angel Acuna would pinch run for him and steal second. Cedric Mullins would walk, and Luis Torrens would bunt them over, and Brett Beatty would make it 10-6 on an RBI groundout. Ryan Helsley would get the 7th, and it would take just 5 pitches for him to surrender a run on a leadoff double by Riley Green and an RBI single to Zach McKinstry. He'd get 2 outs, but be pulled for Brooks Raley, who would finish the inning. Raley would come back out for the 8th and surrender a run on a leadoff double, and 2 more balls put in play, cutting the Mets' lead to 10-8. They'd go to Edwin Diaz for a 4-out save. He'd finish the 8th on 2 pitches, come back out for the 9th, toss a 1-2-3 inning with 2 strikeouts to end the game, taking the series opener in Detroit 10-8. Game 2, Nolan McLean would make his start, and after a rough first inning, he'd shove for the rest of the night, ending his day with 6 innings pitched, 3 hits, 2 earned runs, 3 walks, 7 strikeouts on 90 pitches. The Mets would explode once again offensively. In the first, Pete Alonso would crutch his 32nd home run of the year, a solo shot to open the scoring, down 2-1 in the fourth. Jeff McNeil would tie the game with an RBI single. Cedric Mullins, sacrifice fly, and Luis Torrens would line his 5th home run of the year directly off the right field foul pole to extend the Mets' lead to 6-2. In the 7th, the Mets would pile it on from there against Chris Paddock. Juan Soto would hit his 37th home run of the year. Pete Alonso would follow him with his 2nd home run of the night and his 33rd of the year. Jeff McNeil would line a 2-run single. Brett Beatty would make it 11-2 with an RBI single, and Francisco Lindor would make it 12-2 on a sacrifice fly. Kevin Herget would come on for the 7th and 8th and for long relief and toss scoreless frames, and he'd get the 9th as well, but run out of gas, surrendering 3 earned runs on 3 hits, a walk, and a wild pitch. The Mets would call on Ryan Stanek to get the final 2 outs, and he would work around a hit of his own to finish the game, securing back-to-back wins in Detroit in Game 2, 12-5. Game 3, Clay Holmes would make the start, and following a catcher's interference charge to Kodai Senga in the 2nd inning, that would score an unearned run. He'd pitch into the 5th, getting 2 outs, but walking 2 as well, which the Mets would pull the plug for Gregory Soto, who would allow both of Holmes' base runners to score on a 2-run single by Riley Green, closing the book on Holmes' 4 2/3 innings pitched, 5 hits, 2 earned runs, 1 unearned run, 3 walks, 6 strikeouts on 85 pitches, down 1-0 in the 3rd. The Mets would respond after a 1-out double by Francisco Lindor. Pete Alonso would trade places with him for an RBI double to tie the game up at 1. After Holmes' exit, the Mets would find themselves down 3-1. They would respond again with a leadoff walk to Juan Soto, an infield hit by Pete Alonso. Mark Vientos would get the Mets within 1 with an RBI single. Gregory Soto would come back out for the 6th and work around a leadoff bloop single that would eat up Brandon Nimmo in left field, tossing a scoreless frame. Ryan Helsley would get the 7th, struggle once again. He'd surrender a 3-run homer to Kerry Carpenter to make it a 4-run game. Justin Hageman would come on to finish the inning and pitch the 8th, retiring all 4 batters he faced, as the Mets would lose the series finale in Detroit 6-2. The Mets are now 75-65 on the season, sitting 5.5 games behind the Phillies for first place in the National League East, and they are 4 games ahead of San Francisco now, as they have just passed Cincinnati for the final wild card spot. Obviously, plenty to break down in this series. Plenty of offense, like we said, a culture-changing offense recently. Matt, I'll go to you first, obviously. Positives, negatives, wherever you want to go with this one, because there was definitely a lot that happened, specifically in those first 2 games. I think your mic's muted. Yeah, your mic's muted. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, look, I do want to start with the positives, but I think it's the best to just get the negatives out of the way. Look, again, starting pitching, not where you want it to be. And I know we've had, we're going to obviously have a ton of conversations about Senga later in the episode. But again, like I stated before, like when your offense goes off and, you have Juan Soto hitting home runs, you have Luis Torrens chipping in with home runs here and there. You have Pete Alonso playing well, Nimmo playing well, Vientos playing well. It's like, it's all fine and great having this offense. But then, when you have guys like Sean Manaea going out there, and he gets a big lead, and then right away gives away the lead. It's like, again, it goes back to the point of not being able to play close games. And listen, the Mets are going to have some tough conversations to have with both Manaea and Senga. Obviously, there is the whole talk of Senga maybe going to AAA, but look, I think with Manaea, obviously, look, we wanted him back in the offseason. He was a very good pitcher for us last year. Was great down the stretch after he made that slight adjustment to his arm angle. Pitched great in the playoffs, but he's had injury problems this year. He's missed more than half of the season. And let's be honest, like the main reason why I think he's pitching as bad as he is right now, the guy is hurt. I don't think he's fully injured, but it's clear that the guy is being negatively affected by the loose bodies in his elbow. Because you could just see by the way he pitches and by the way how he tails off, the deeper he gets into starts, because let's not forget, because before you go to this start against the Tigers, his last 2 starts against the Nationals and the Nationals against the Phillies, while he didn't go deep into those games, the thing that I liked about Manaea was in those 2 games, he actually started off those games pretty well. He was throwing strikes, he was getting tons of swings and misses, and he was getting through the order fairly quickly. But then as we see, when he gets to that 5th inning, and even after he gets a couple outs in the 4th inning, he tends to, just lose it. And I think part of that is because of just the loose bodies in his elbow. So look, there is the conversation that maybe you move him to the bullpen come playoff time, but even then, like if he's having these pains in his elbow, and you're starting to use him more and more out of the bullpen, how more non-effective does he look in the postseason in that role? So listen, I think for me, like I said, I love Manaea. I think it's just one of those things where I think he should cut his season short. I think he should get the surgery and prepare to come back next year, because I'm sorry, like I said, I love the guy, but I don't want to run him out in the postseason when he's clearly being affected by the loose bodies, and I don't want to see see him give up tons of runs and then put this team in deficits come playoff time, because I mean every single run in the playoffs, it counts, and you don't want to be put you don't want to dig yourself into a big hole. Nolan McLean, look, he obviously didn't start the game well. He clearly had control issues with his sweeper and his curveball, most notably. But the thing I liked about Nolan McLean, and the thing, we've talked about a ton with the veteran starting pitchers, one of the big problems is, they don't make mid-game adjustments on the fly. You saw that with Nolan McLean. Like I said, he had trouble with his sweeper and his curveball command, went away from it, went more sinker, fastball heavy. And then as we saw, he got more comfortable and then started incorporating those two pitches, later in his start. And, he was able to go and give you 6 innings of 2-run ball, which is, something, that we've cried out for our veteran, starters, to give you more consistently. And then obviously you look at Clay Holmes. Look, Clay Holmes was okay. Like he looked good early in the start. Obviously, he was
basically Clay Holmes.
Yeah, he gave you a regular Clay Holmes start where he looks good. He's controlling the strike zone. He was actually getting more swings and misses than he usually gets during his starts. And then he kind of hits that wall. The walks kind of hurt him a little bit. I know he kind of got hurt a little bit by the catcher's interference on Hayden Sanger, which caused the Tigers to bring home the first run of the game. But overall, I thought he was fine. It's just, again, hits that wall in the 5th inning. And, and again, obviously, with Mendoza and all the decisions he's made, when Mendoza made the decision to pull Clay Holmes and go to Gregory Soto, I didn't necessarily agree with it, but I saw where Mendoza was coming from, just because we've seen, Holmes, whenever he gets into trouble, he either stays in for one more batter or 2 batters too long. And then, the damage gets done, and then Mendoza ends up pulling him. So I understand where Mendoza was coming from, and I agree with him to a certain extent. I just thought for me that Holmes looked good enough to where I would have felt more comfortable giving him that one more batter. But ultimately, then it's down to Gregory Soto to execute. But, I mean, listen, it's more the same from the starting pitching point of view, where, your veterans are really not giving you enough, but your young starting pitchers like Nolan McLean, they're going out there and giving this team the much needed length that, that this team needs currently.
Yeah, obviously the pitching is going to be something that they obviously need to look at. It's not even just the fact that the lack of consistency or the lack of, the options that have kind of fizzled out. They've had a decent amount of injuries this year. And speaking of those injuries, I don't know if this is effective. I'm just kind of looking it up of how loose bodies kind of affect the elbow for pitchers. And what I'm getting at right here from what I'm kind of looking up here seems to be it's a conditioning issue, which basically makes me think it's like, that's probably as to why he's not going deep into games. Now, the problem that I kind of have with this, and I think we all do, is why is he pitching through it when we know that it's the better opportunity for him to be even better, whether it is next year, for him to take it as of right now. I understand that they may have some limiting options right now, but I think this team can make do with it. Then the same thing goes for guys like Kodai Senga and things like that. Pitching through injuries is just dumb. Like, there's no reason to do it. You're going to make it worse. And also your performance is not going to be great. Sometimes it affects guys, sometimes it doesn't. But Manaea definitely is someone that I think, even though we've seen the stuff still be there, he's still getting the swings and misses, we're not seeing any volume from him. Doesn't help with Clay Holmes not being able to go deep into games. It doesn't help with Kodai Senga just coming back from injury and not doing well. Like, again, it has so many, this downfall has so many killers. Let's just say that, especially from that rotation. And we knew that this rotation had question marks, but I don't think that we really expected it to be this brutal as to where we are praying for these guys to get through the 5th inning every single night. And asking veterans to go 5 innings, tough task for some reason. They somewhat hit a wall. Clay Holmes, I'm not really surprised. Sean Manaea, I mean, he's probably banged up. Kodai Senga will get a little bit more into, but Evan, if there's anything that you want to add, obviously we know that the offense is popping off, but obviously the pitching, I mean, it still is hanging by a thread right now, and it's going to be a deciding factor if the offense is not there. We saw it in Game 3 where the offense wasn't there, and the pitching ended up coughing it up. So I don't know. I feel like we're definitely we're on a balance beam right now, and we could really fall off at any moment. And that's what I think is very, very scary with this pitching staff.
Yeah, just funny how like the opposite. This is the opposite conversation that we were having the last time we broke down a series. How we were talking about that the offense needs to get better, and now the offense is actually performing, and now you have the pitching that can't even just like keep them in a game at all. Like it's one thing if they started to falter a little bit and give up like 4 or 5 runs, but we're talking about games where it's like 6 runs, 7, 10 runs sometimes in these games, and it's just inexcusable, especially, just Peterson, for example, last time. But a lot of it's also just kind of a spiral effect. Like I'm not happy with the way, just because Matt touched on it, I'm not happy with the way Mendoza handled the Holmes start when he was out there, because to me, it's one thing if Holmes already gave up like 3 runs at that point and you wanted to pull him. He only gave up 1 run to that point. If your offense that has been putting up north of, 8 runs a game lately can't do that for you today, then it's on them. I am willing to give Holmes the chance to go out there, and worst case, he gives up a few more runs in that scenario. And, on top of that, you have Gregory Soto, who you touched on, who's not getting his job done against the lefties. And my other problem is still, why was Ryan Helsley in that game when you saved your bullpen from the game prior? You have 2 lefties coming up at the top of the order there, and you're throwing Ryan Helsley, who's been in low leverage spots lately, right into the fire. To me, it was simple the way to map out the bullpen from where you were. You go to Brooks Raley and maybe try to push him for 4 or 5 outs and then go to Diaz, or you go to Raley to get those lefties out. Then you go to Rogers for a couple outs, and then you go to Diaz to end the game. And maybe, I don't know if it would have mattered with the offense because they ended up finishing with 2 runs, but maybe you have a chance to come back in the game and, win one of those close games that we're talking about. But there's just so many little things too. And then it's like Starling Marte. He's been on a heater lately. And then we see Cedric Mullins in the lineup instead of putting McNeil in center and then having Marte DH. It's like, why are you sitting the guy that's actually performing as of lately when Cedric Mullins has been a disaster? It's one thing if he's been kind of average, but he's been a train wreck ever since that he's got here, like defensively, with the bat, whatever it is. So, listen, I don't fully blame Mendoza because of stuff like Ricardo saying where the starters are not getting deep enough in the games. I don't blame him for that, but I also do blame him for certain little decisions where it's like you should be aware of your players a little bit more. Like there's too many times Tyler Rogers, like Matt talked about before, bring him in with guys on base. It's like you need to know these things about your pitchers or your hitters to where certain matchups benefit them more than others. And it shouldn't just be, oh, this guy throws with his left hand, so we got to stack the lineup with right-handed bats. Oh, this guy throws right-handed, we got to stack the lineup with left-handed bats. So it's just little things like that that have drove me insane this year.
Yeah, I've talked about this so many times, obviously, with them having a different lineup pretty much every single day. And listen, if you want to play the matchups, but there's got to be some kind of formula of the everyday players of where they are playing. If you're going to have, obviously, that top 4, they've jumbled them probably in every single combination besides having Alonso hit leadoff. Like, that is how crazy they have gone this year with that top 4. It seems like we have a new lineup every single day, and that's basically what they've continued to do all year. Now, Starling Marte obviously had a rough game, that last game. Obviously, he had 2 crucial plate appearances in that thing that probably killed it for us. But again, playing these close games again, I don't know if it's the offense where we're like, okay, they're in like this constant comeback mode or whatever because of like they don't have, the situational, or they're very inconsistent in the situational hitting. But again, it comes down to the pitching not basically being able to do their jobs. They all have underperformed. They all haven't been great. And, I think that we all can agree that Cedric Mullins is also pretty unplayable. The only way that he has value to this team has been walking more than he has been. Hasn't been swiping that many bases either way, but doesn't seem like the power that he was showing in Baltimore has been displayed at all. We already talked about this, warned everyone about this with him playing center field, that he has one of the worst arms in all of baseball. So again, I just don't see the upgrade there whatsoever. It just made sense to just basically just stay with Tyrone Taylor and Jeff McNeil. It just seemed like basically a waste. Tyrone Taylor obviously just went to the injured list, so that limits your options. You may have someone with swag and aura coming back here in, I don't know, a week. But again, he's not in a guarantee to completely be a game changer, because who knows if he can move properly coming off of a broken foot. So they're banking on a lot of things completely going well with some of these decisions. Obviously, I think Jeff McNeil in center field, I think that he's proven that he can be a sturdy center fielder. I still don't like the concept of having him in that position. Not just because of the range. This guy's 33, 34 years old. He shouldn't be in center field. I'd much rather them just kind of just maybe probably just move Nimmo more back to center field, but he hasn't even been that great in left field either. So again, there's a part of it that I think is very, very fragile with them. Either it is defensively or whether it is in these certain situations with them pitching wise, it's not fantastic. And I feel like we're really getting into a point where they have to make somewhat of a decision of who is going to be getting a majority of this playing time. Because it seems like we've got 20 games left and they still don't have a decision. Like, they still haven't made a single decision whatsoever. I just don't even know how they can figure out a way where there's certain guys that are playing consistently, and that goes into the offense too as well. Like we've said, pitching, yes, it goes hand in hand with the bullpen, but as well, when you talk about who's playing and who's not, something's got to show consistency. That's all that I have. If there's anything you guys want to add, obviously we've got plenty we can bring up, but
yeah, I mean, the only thing I could really say, if I'm going to try to reach for a positive with the pitching at all, the only positive I could possibly have is that you could start to piggyback these starting pitchers, which will help save the bullpen a little bit. But the problem on top of that is still these guys in the bullpen are not pitching good enough. And the thing that's very frustrating the most is, I talked about it during the deadline stream, how the Dodgers last year really showed the luxury of having a deep bullpen, to where there were times Evan Phillips was coming in like the fourth, fifth inning. And now it's like we're back to what we were at last year, where you have a circle of trust of two guys. Right now it's Diaz and Raley. And it's like, there's still time for these things to get right, but it's coming at you rapidly. Like Matt said, there's only like 20 something games left. Now is the time for these relievers to start to find a rhythm. And if it's not going to happen, then this team's in for a rude awakening come playoff time. Like you were saying before, Carson, they could score the runs, but if the pitching's not going to match up, is the offense going to hit against that elite pitching like I talked about before as well, which, I still have my fair share of concerns there. So just like anytime you could maybe think of a few positives, it's like there's also something to counter that at the same time.
Yeah, It's all really just about what team is going to show up. I think that that's basically what it shows. I think we are in good position when we see these young guys on here, whether it is Tong, even though we're saying that after one start. It seems like McLean has basically been a right and W so far for this team, but then you're looking at these other arms that they have to figure out a way to figure it out. I'm not as concerned as of right now looking at guys like David Peterson, who I know have done well, but recently it hasn't been a fantastic stretch for him. But he still has been able to give us length in between. It just has been a little bit inconsistent in that way. But overall, the offense, I do want to touch on that before we move on. Obviously, Juan Soto is on fire right now. Pete Alonso had a really good series as well. Jeff McNeil had a really good series. Luis Torrens. We are getting a lot of different contributions from a lot of these different pieces, whether that is not really just off the bench, but just kind of the deep part of the lineup, which has been a concern for a while. And that's the main reason as to why I think that these run totals are coming in, not just because Juan Soto is hot. It's because we are seeing a decent amount of these guys red hot for a decent amount of time, and they're definitely picking up the slack. And that's what I think is very, very encouraging. Now, do I think that Cedric Mullins belongs in this starting lineup right now, batting 7th or batting 6th? No, I don't. I think that he probably belongs on the bench at this current moment, but I don't think that they have that option really with the flexibility of what you have on your bench as of right now with Tyrone Taylor out. Maybe Jose Siri takes away some of that playing time, but Siri wasn't doing fantastic when he was here to start off the season before he ended up getting hurt. So I don't know how they want to figure this out, how they form this together, but whatever combinations they've been putting out there offensively recently, they have been working. And I think that only goes to the credit of the culture-changing hitting coach that we have that told us, hey, we should sit fastball. Genius. A genius in his own natural habitat. Took him 4 months to realize, hey, we're swinging through fastballs and staring at shit down the middle.
Took him 4 years.
Bow down to him. Bow down to him. He is a complete genius. But you can definitely see the change in approach. I'm glad to see them, better late than never, make those adjustments offensively. We're seeing higher run totals on the board. Obviously, we are seeing more guys in this lineup contribute, and that has been a good thing. It's been one of the main reasons as to why they've been able to stay afloat, because the pitching has definitely not been the reason as to why compared to what it was in the first 2 months. So offensively, if there's anything you guys want to cover with this, obviously, Juan Soto, MVP conversation now after we're like, okay, this guy might be having the worst year of his career. I mean, yeah. It's changing just like that. That's how big of a game changer he is.
I mean, he still doesn't look happy to me. That's the most important thing.
But yeah, I mean, it's nice not having to tweet the mouse pictures of him anymore, or tweeting, man or mouse about him. But no, like the other main positives is the fact that, and I know that it didn't really show this series, but like Vientos has been playing a lot better, and Alvarez is going to come back, which is only going to add depth to the lineup, because the biggest problem early on is they were just so reliant on that top 4 to where, especially Alonso and Lindor, because Alonso was really like carrying the load with runners in scoring position early. And it's like those two, if they weren't doing anything, then the offense wasn't scoring. It's nice to see now, McNeil is actually starting to contribute. Vientos, even though, like I said before, not as much this series, but he's been contributing and looking like what he was last year more, which is what they really miss. And then with Alvarez coming back, Marte, even though he had some bad at-bats, and even though I've been very critical of him this year, he's at least given you like some competitive at-bats here and there. Really, the biggest problem is like when you get to, and it's going to change with Alvarez, but you don't really have a bench to utilize right now to help you in certain situations. Mauricio just does absolutely nothing and is, letting position players get him out these days now. And I don't understand why he's not in AAA at this point. Like, to me, if he's going to sit on the bench, and we talked about this going into the year, if you're going to have these young guys sitting on the bench, then why are they even up in the big leagues? They need to be getting their at bats. But yeah, I mean, outside of that, it sucks that Taylor was starting to, heat up a little bit and then he gets injured. Fly high hoopist. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's really the only gripe that I have right now. And then, now when you thought maybe you were getting help, Winker's done for the year, which is also very unfortunate, but definitely a lot more positives because of the noticeable change in approach for what Matt said. And for the first time in 4 years, Eric Chavez figured it out, and now he's taking victory laps on Instagram. So good work, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's had 1 month of a sample. I mean, he's always here when things are going well, and then he's the victim when things are going bad. And I'm hoping
putting edits on his story.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm hoping that this guy who's in his 40s, probably about to be 50, that type of behavior gets displayed and we don't see him next year. But I understand that this is a results-based business and they have actually been hitting fairly well. But I'm not going to sit here and bow down to this asshole and say that this guy is a complete genius and finally figured it out. Nope, the fans figured it out, and we probably just pushed you down that well so hard that you're like, okay, I got to change something and stop being an asshole. Anyways, speaking of guys who are, down and everything, I got to take over for Frank for the Unk Report. For, what we've got going on health-wise with this team, and there's some stuff that I also have to add afterwards. But Tyler McGill made his final rehab start for AAA Syracuse on Tuesday, tossing 4+ innings pitched, 6 hits, 3 earned runs, 2 walks, 5 strikeouts on 79 pitches. With one more minor league option remaining, the Mets will make a decision on McGill's activation soon, probably in the next week. The Mets' 29-year-old right-hander has been on the injured list since mid-June due to a right elbow strain. Mets outfielder Tyrone Taylor has been placed on the injured list due to a right hamstring strain. The 31-year-old last played Friday versus Miami and has been unavailable off the bench ever since. There is currently no timetable for his return. Mets outfielder / designated hitter Jesse Winker has been completely shut down from baseball activities following a brief rehab stint in Port St. Lucie. The 31-year-old is likely out for the remainder of the 2025 season, as Winker was placed on the injured list due to back inflammation after he suffered it just 48 hours after being activated off the injured list from an oblique strain that he experienced in early May. Mets outfielder Jose Siri has continued his rehab assignment for AAA Syracuse this week. The 30-year-old played 9 innings in center field yesterday and led off as the DH on Tuesday. Siri has been on the injured list since April due to a fractured left tibia bone that he suffered after fouling a ball off his shin. We also got some update, obviously. Francisco Alvarez, he caught back-to-back games for Syracuse yesterday. He also hit a grand slam, so it looks like the power, hopefully it's still there, and hopefully it doesn't affect him with his hand this time. Third time's a charm, I guess. Reed Garrett just started off a rehab assignment for AA Binghamton. We just got that announcement while this stream was going on. So he is going to make a rehab start. So I'm guessing he's just going to be a opener. So he'll probably face 3 or 4 batters or whatever. And hopefully we can get him back because we've seen Reed Garrett come back from injuries before and he's been very, very effective. It's kind of an up and down train with him. He definitely could help this bullpen that is definitely hurting in a current moment, even though he was not doing fairly well. Other than that, speaking of the bullpen, I want to get into the main story right here, and that being Ryan Helsley, who has been a disaster since coming over from the Cardinals in a trade at the trade deadline. Just a complete bag of vomit. I don't know how I want to describe this at this point because I'm out of words. But as for just the rundown, because we have to do it, bells of hell, obviously. You can see from his game logs, I mean, almost every single appearance has been awful, and either he's not getting out of it, he's not striking out batters, not getting these not getting swings and misses. You can see in 14 games, he's faced 62 batters. He's pitched 11 innings. He has an over 11 earned run average. Strikeouts are down. Walks are up. He's given up plenty of home runs as well. He has a win probability added of almost -2, which is nearly impossible, even if you are a reliever or not. And he has just been awful overall. Now, we did obviously get some quotes from Ryan Helsley, some other stuff about the possibility of him tipping pitches. We know that has been the story for this last week of how they kind of know what's coming, whether he's throwing 102 or not. Now, he did talk about whether he was or believed he was tipping pitches. He said, "I'm not trying to sound arrogant or anything, but I feel like my stuff is too good to be hit around as consistently as it has been since I've been here. We've played mostly teams in the hunt, and a lot of those teams nowadays will have guys who look specifically for those things. It's pretty glaring and obvious when I am doing it." Will Salmon of The Athletic also talked about from the adjustments that they have kind of been making from the supposed tipping. Now, his latest outing, obviously, him giving up the 3-run homer to Kerry Carpenter. They said the Mets have tried fixing Helsley's tipping issue. Helsley reportedly didn't love the new adjustments at first, but he believes he is better off now that he has changed the positioning of his hands on the mound. Mendoza said that Helsley's struggles on Wednesday were not related to tipping, which I don't think really makes anybody feel better, to be honest, because whether it is a tipping issue or not, if there's another issue that he experienced on the mound where he couldn't throw strikes and the ball was going over the wall, didn't seem like we saw really anything completely different whatsoever, which is kind of unfortunate to the point where we just don't know what the deal is right now with Ryan Helsley, and I've come to the point where I am done watching this guy pitch. I've seen enough. I don't think that's an overreaction. I think he has been one of the worst trade deadline acquisitions we have seen for a while. We've seen a lot of bad ones. So, Evan, Ryan Helsley, a disaster, a complete disaster. No way to just dance around it. And I don't know if we see this getting better at any time soon. I just don't see it, because if the tipping's been fixed, supposedly, what else is there to do? I mean, when 102 is going down the plate and it's going over the wall, I mean, what else can you do? You don't really have that much time to figure this stuff out.
Yeah, it's bad when Matt and I went to that Jonah Tong debut. In the 6th inning when he came in, everyone in the stadium was just like annoyed when the bells started playing. It was just, it's so stupid. But this is the thing that I've been saying though too about the whole tipping pitches thing is like, to me, I always felt like he just wasn't locating his pitch as well either. And now that you have Mendoza saying they fixed the tipping pitches issues, that only supports my claim more that there's location issues too. And if that's the case, then we're talking about a guy that cannot be on this playoff roster. And it's so frustrating because when you look back at that deadline, it's like the thing we were so excited about is you have a guy to pair with Diaz, and now you could give Diaz those days off. But this also is a spiral effect of what I talked about in our text group chat yesterday, where it's like injuries decimating this bullpen, ruin them from being able to be more aggressive to maybe get a Duran or go out and get like a different type of reliever. But I don't think anyone, and I don't want people sitting here and blaming Stearns like I'm seeing in the chat. No one, no one could possibly tell me they thought it was going to be this bad. If it's one thing if he had a few rough outings here and there, and because there were some warning signs about his fastball being hittable, but no one could tell me they thought it was going to be this bad. And there's no way Stearns thought that either. But all I know is that, if we don't see things change within these next few outings, then he can't be on this playoff roster because he's not even recording innings, or even outs, I should say, at this rate. You're lucky if you get 2 outs from him during these outings. The fact that he only threw 5 pitches in that first game, it's horrible. And I really don't know if it's like maybe he starts to utilize some other pitches. I mean, we've seen him throw a few curveballs here and there. Maybe he mixes in a cutter that he threw at one point. I don't know if that's a fix, but like he's got to get desperate and try something. All I know is that I don't understand, and this is again is what drives me insane with this manager. How are you throwing him in low leverage situations? You have a rested bullpen, and it's like, he's not doing great in low leverage, so let's put him in high leverage against the top part of the Tigers order. Like, that's a great idea when you got an off day the next day as well. To me, that also just makes absolutely no sense. The only way he should be in close games right now is if your bullpen is taxed and you desperately need an inning, and you have to be very desperate at that point.
Yeah, this has gotten to a point where you can't put this guy into the game. I mean, he can't really do anything right as of right now. And whether we're talking about it from fastball or slider, I mean, again, this is something that I've kind of feel like it's sit here and brewing, because we've talked about his fastball being hittable, because to be honest, in a vacuum, that fastball is not really his best pitch. Whether he can throw it 103 or 104 miles an hour, he was throwing more sliders when he was with the Cardinals, and he's been throwing more fastballs here. I don't know if he was just trying to air it out and show what he can do to start off, but I feel like this has hit a spiral as to where this is a massive issue. Whether you're talking about it from a 2-pitch guy or this or that. I mean, obviously we have seen more control issues with guys like Edwin Diaz, or just command of being able to locate his slider properly. But it seems like both of these pitches are being completely either whether it is crushed, or these are two pitches that are easily picked up by batters, especially these left-handed hitters who have been teeing off on him ever since ever since that he got here. So, Matt, I'll go on to you. Obviously, you hinted at it earlier. I mean, I don't know where you can find the answers at this point. Like, I really don't. You have 22 games left. How do you figure this out at this point? I don't know. I know that the Mets are going to probably keep continuing to try, because they traded for him. They traded assets to get him. However, I mean, how long can we continue to do this until we're like, okay, this is not working. This is not working. We're going to have to cut some losses here. And this is probably the fastest I've probably given up on a pitcher, especially of this caliber that we know has had good stuff in the past.
Yeah, I'm completely shocked that he's been this bad since he's come to the Mets. And look, obviously, you guys both hinted about the tipping issue. At first, when Helsley was struggling, I simply thought it was just a tipping issue. But the more and more we look at it, and the more and more evidence that we gather, I don't think it's a tipping issue. I just think we might have to accept that this guy just can't pitch in New York. Because and again, this goes back to the point of like what Evan was saying, and like people were saying in the chat. I forgot, what like Two Tone said. It's like he can't pitch in New York, and it's like you can't blame Stearns too much for trading for him, because nobody in their right mind would have thought Helsley would have been this bad. It's the same kind of concept. And I brought this up in the group chat last night when we were talking about it. I get it's not a Yankees pod. He's traded for Devin Williams in the offseason. It's like it was the right move to bring in, because Devin Williams over the past couple of years had been one of the best closers in all of Major League Baseball. But if it's the fact that he just can't pitch in New York, you can't predict that until he actually comes in and shows you that he can. And again, like with Helsley, I'm not saying that Helsley, before his time in St. Louis, he was up to the standard of Devin Williams in Milwaukee. But at least Ryan Helsley had a track record of being a reliable back-end reliever for the St. Louis Cardinals, and he built up a nice track record over the last couple of years. And it's like I was saying, Carson, it's like you were saying, it's like with 22 games left, and you look at some of the series the Mets are playing, like obviously you have the Cincinnati series starting tomorrow. You have a 4-game set in Philly. You're having a 3-game set against the Rangers. You're playing the Padres. You're playing the Cubs. You're playing a lot of very good teams who are also fighting for playoff spots. And it's like we talk about, it's like with Helsley right now, the only really place you can really slot him into is, blowout games or games that are not even close, or low leverage situations. Well, with the remaining schedule and looking at who they're playing, to me, I think that a lot of those games are going to be close. So really, again, this comes back to the point of where are you throwing in Ryan Helsley to try and get him right? It's just I don't see a ton of opportunities where that's going to be the case. And look, Helsley shouldn't have been in the game yesterday, and I fully agree. But to me, it's almost delaying the inevitable because, okay, even if he wasn't used yesterday, you're about to play, was it 10 straight games against the Reds, Phillies, and Rangers? Your bullpen's going to get tired at some point in the middle of those 10 games. So eventually he was going to have to come in, and he's probably going to stink it up again. So really, it's just about delaying the inevitable with Helsley. And again, it's like, I don't know what to do with him. And like I brought up at the start of the podcast, we already have Ryan Stanek, who we don't trust in any situation. So you could get away with having one guy who, quote unquote, could cheerlead in the bullpen. But I'm sorry, with Helsley and the fact that you gave up 3 prospects for him, you cannot afford to have 2 guys in your bullpen just sit there and be afraid to use them. Especially like don't get me wrong, if the Mets had a bigger lead over the playoffs and a bigger lead over the competitors, you might be able to get away with that, but not when they only have a 4-game lead over the San Francisco Giants for that last wildcard spot. It's just the situation is too right. It's too close right now, and again, it's like they're probably not going to DFA him, but again, if you're afraid to use him, and again, like I said, when you look at the schedule and they're playing a lot of, really good teams, and you're probably going to play a lot of close games, where are you supposed to pitch him?
No, he doesn't fit in here. Like it doesn't fit here at all. And listen, there's been obviously comparisons to what he was doing in St. Louis to maybe a few years ago to compare it to now. It's obviously a different situation. And like we've talked about the fastball usage, the slider usage, but we are seeing like from what he was doing in St. Louis, there still is the strikeout numbers are pretty much the same as to what he's doing here compared to what he's doing in St. Louis. It may not seem like it, but it really just seems like it's a command issue at this point because the hard contact is there. He's also walking even more batters. I mean, double the batters that he was walking in St. Louis. So again, I don't know what the issue here is, but also you have a tendency of other guys in this bullpen beyond Stanek or Helsley who have this, tendency to possibly blow up as well. Gregory Soto has not been that sharp. We've seen Tyler Rogers have a few tough outings. We've seen other guys. The most reliable guy in this bullpen that's not named Edwin Diaz have been these guys that have been coming up here and then getting their arms completely burned out and then sent back to Syracuse and completely recycled over and over again. Guys like Justin Hageman, Kevin Herget, they just claimed Wander Suaro off of waivers today from Atlanta. So he's probably also going to be one of those guys in the mix there if they can't get anybody to go deep into the game. And hopefully that doesn't happen, but we all know that that's the complete after effects. I'm not going to say that the bullpen's been completely overused because of the rotation. You can say it, but with Helsley, I mean, this was supposed to be the 8th inning guy, and he's been the worst player on the team since that trade deadline.
Yeah, even then, just to touch upon when you were reading back the quotes of Helsley and saying that he feels like he does have good stuff, but simply from just watching it from afar, like I can't agree with that statement. It's like, okay, you still have the velo, you can still hit 101, 102 on your fastball, but you can't control your fastball, and then your slider has no sharpness to it whatsoever. Like the slider has been a pitch in the past where Helsley was able, to rely on it and get a ton of swings and misses out of the zone. And simply right now, like he's still throwing that slider, but every single hitter is laying off that slider. And even like I recall, because I forgot. It was the finale. No, it was the first game of the second game of the Philly series that me and Evan went to. And when he came out of the bullpen and when he had that at bat to Harrison Bader, he threw the fastball a couple times at the beginning of the at bat, but then he threw like 5 sliders in a row, and he wasn't getting any type of swing and miss on it. And Bader was simply either fouling it off or sitting off of it. And we're like, eventually, like, you have to mix in the fastball at some point. But when you keep throwing slider after slider after slider, like, eventually Bader's going to make the adjustment and say, okay, clearly a fastball is coming here at some point. And he threw that fastball right at the knees. Bader crushed it. And it was a very similar pitch to what we saw with Kerry Carpenter yesterday. It was a fastball right at the knees. And Carpenter just sails it out to right field and puts up the Tigers by another 3 runs. So it's like, listen, Helsley can say he has confidence in his stuff right now, but clearly from just watching his stuff from afar, like, I don't agree with that standpoint whatsoever.
Yeah, the command
and it
is
grades
just all
out as
over
some
the
of the
place.
best. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It grades out as still some of the best, and that's more of just the breaking stuff. But his 4-seam usage has jumped his slider usage as compared to what we saw because he's just been going straight to the heat a lot, but he hasn't been able to locate at all. And that's the thing. It seems like grades out well with location. He grades out well with overall pitchability, but he's been a completely different guy since coming here. And I don't know if I don't know if they just don't have time to make decisions here with him. Like, they don't have time to adjust things and make him feel better and this and that. Yes, they made these trades, but it's like every time he goes out there, he's a liability. So what exactly can we do? Evan, I interrupted you here.
No, the only thing I was really going to say is, like, I feel like he's kind of forced to throw the fastball more because every time he throws the slider, it's in the dirt at this point. So it's like, and when there's anything in the zone, it's pretty easy to tell what it's going to be because his fastball is just so flat.
Yeah, it's bad. It is very, very bad. And like we've said, it's in a situation where he's going out there, he's basically just creating a mess, making it more difficult for this team. I basically, when he came into that Detroit game yesterday, I just took my eyes off the screen because I knew he was gonna make it worse because that's basically what it's been for him every single time, and that's exactly what I did. And then I hear the home run call for Kerry Carpenter, and I'm like, yeah, that checks out. Pretty much checks out. Had no reaction, to be honest, because that's basically what we have gotten from Ryan Helsley ever since he got here, and I'm not very, in a position where I'm going after, Tyler Rogers, or I'm going after Gregory Soto in the manner that I'm going after Ryan Helsley, because he has just been noticeably bad as a Met. But even with Gregory Soto not being able to get the left-handers out, which is basically what they brought him into, this is just shortening the pen. This is all they have done. They've made it shorter as compared to what they had before this trade deadline. And that's the problem as to why it just doesn't seem like it's working out. And I think there needs to be deep consideration for Helsley not being on this postseason roster. I do. I really do. And to be honest, if they don't make that decision, then keep putting him in the game, keep putting him in these high leverage situations, he's going to pitch us out of the postseason picture. Like that's the thing. Like, make a decision here. Now, what is that solution? We really don't know that much, but I do know that they could do something better than this to get the job done. I know you are short right now with the rotation struggling to go deep into games. You're making, all these transactions. Hopefully Reed Garrett can help you when he comes back, when he's, more fresh and he gets his, ginger boy reset. But, it's one of those things where how do they piece it together where it can be well functioned, even with the starters not being able to get out of the fifth inning? And that was kind of this thought process of bringing in Helsley and bringing in Soto and bringing in Rogers and adding these other pieces. Now, there is one arm that people have been talking about a lot. I even mentioned him as a possible guy that they could call up for September call-ups. They didn't end up doing it, and that being Dylan Ross, who you'd think that when he does throw very hard, he is more of a piece that maybe replaces something like Helsley or Stanek, but he's got a kitchen sink. Like, this is someone who has an elite splitter. This is someone who has a plus slider and cutter. Like, he has a lot more weapons from the bullpen. I don't know what the usage is going to look like if they bring him up here, but again, Rule 5 eligible. You never know if you could possibly lose him in the Rule 5 draft. I still would end up calling him up because they always seem to be making these bullpen transactions no matter what. He can't go multiple innings. He's a one-inning guy. And I know that there is, there is some of these, there's some of these concerns with his walks. Obviously, he can be a little wild at some times, decent amount of wild pitches, but when you have those amount of weapons that he does have, he has like 5 or 6 different pitches, it gives you a little bit more confidence as compared to somebody like Ryan Helsley, who fastball slider is basically the majority, and both of them are getting either tattooed or spit on. So that's the main reason as to why I would give a call to Dylan Ross. I don't think it would completely help and solve a problem, but I think that it is more of an option as compared to, well, Ryan Helsley's just going to go out there in the 8th inning. He can't do that. He can't, because this team's going to lose. They're going to lose with him going out there in the 8th inning. And then basically with him collapsing as much, it affects Edwin Diaz as well, who likes to pitch a lot. And they haven't been able to use him that much. So again, whether it is with the offense exploding the way that they have and they didn't have to use him, or taking them completely out of the game with guys like Ryan Helsley pitching like shit, you can't use Edwin Diaz, so he's not going to be as sharp either. And then that's going to make it's just a constant snowball. So they're going to have to fill in and deepen this pen the best way that they know how. We all know Wander Suaro will probably be up here at some point, I'm sure. There is a possibility where maybe they do call up a guy like Dylan Ross, but it seems like his number hasn't been called. We got a report from Will Salmon, as I'm looking at it on Fangraphs, back in July of the 8th, saying Ross might join the Mets bullpen later this season. That's from July. Still hasn't gotten the call. So I don't know what they're waiting for. It's probably just the walk issue that they probably will just rub in salt into the wounds up here. But they got to make some kind of a decision here, because Ryan Helsley is not it right now. Because if they're going to bring up these starters to save the day, you might as well do it with relievers. I don't like the concept of doing that, but like we said, 22 games are left. You're running out of time. You don't have a choice at this point. All balls to the wall at this point. If there's anything you guys want to add on this bullpen, I mean, it's just, it's definitely, like we said, just inability to play close games at this point. Ryan Helsley is one of the main reasons as to why.
Yeah, I just think that they probably just haven't called him up because of what you said, to where he can't give you multiple innings in comparison to guys like Hageman and Herget, to where, if the rotation was actually giving you some length, you'd actually maybe have some wiggle room to call a guy like Ross up. But because you don't have that wiggle room, and because you can't, unless you like Phantom IL Stanek or Phantom IL Helsley, it's like, where is the room for him when you kind of also need these multi-inning guys? That's really just the biggest problem here. If they were going to give him a chance, their best time to do it was probably in July, before they made all those trades, just to see what he has and see if he could fit into this bullpen. And then who knows, maybe you don't have to make one of those trades and you save some of your assets, and maybe you have a hidden gem here all along. But now it's like, I don't know where he would fit into the equation. I mean, to me, I could tell you right now, I'd rather see him or even Ryan Lambert. And I know Ryan Lambert's in Double-A. I'd rather see those two guys up here right now over watching Stanek and Helsley go out there and shit themselves every time.
Yeah, I would just replace him. I would replace Stanek with Dylan Ross at this point. Just send somewhat of a message, but it doesn't seem like they want to let go of Ryan Stanek. Like, for some reason, he's like the top Pookie there, and they don't want to get rid of him.
It's the Ottavino this year.
It's the Ottavino this year. Obviously, I was very excited when they brought in Stanek initially, but it's very obvious he doesn't have it. Like, it's very, very obvious he's not trustworthy. They can't rely on him, whether he has the postseason success or not. If that's what they're banking on, you're going to pitch yourself out of the postseason picture if you keep these guys in here and not just saying, well, Ryan Stanek did well in the postseason, let's keep him around for that. That's not good. That's not a good mindset to have, especially when you have not even clinched a playoff spot yet, which I think that's the main reason as to why we have such a big issue. I still do trust Tyler Rogers to get the job done. because he's basically been doing what he has been doing with the Giants, and that's just been inducing a ground balls. We need to see the guys up the middle turn double plays a lot better as well. Edwin Diaz, obviously, he's been the top guy in there, and he should be. That's your $102 million arm. And then Brooks Raley, I obviously trust to do so. Not just the fact that he's a good lefty to have, but against left-handed hitters and right-handed hitters, I feel like there's more flexibility. And then after that, who knows? And that's not a way to treat a bullpen that needs to be used a lot from a rotation that's not going deep into games. Like that's the way that I view it, as a double-edged sword, whether it's from the rotation or the bullpen. That's the problem.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, just to build off, like, I've been like watch Dylan Ross like pitch in like deep, like in a deep breakdown. But I mean, just looking at it from like the breakdown, the pitching profile. I mean, look, I know the walks are an issue, but he does throw 5 different pitches. He does have decent velo. He does have decent swing and miss stuff. So, like, to me, like, I wouldn't be.
He can touch 102 if he needs to.
I would not be afraid to call him up whatsoever. And I know, like, you guys talked about, like what you said, Carson, about the walk issue. And I agree, like, just looking from the numbers, like, he definitely does have a walk and control issue. And then, I mean, like, even Evan brought up probably one of the main reasons why they don't want to bring him up compared to guys like Hageman, Waddell, and Herges, because he isn't capable of giving multiple innings. But from what I'm looking at is, like, Stanek and Helsley are not even giving you an inning. So even if I'm getting an inning out of Dylan Ross, like, it's still more valuable than what Helsley and Stanek are giving you, because right now we're not in a position of power to bargain right now. Like, we are desperate right now just for a reliable inning of work. So listen, I get that, the walks may be an issue with him, but if he could at least give me, a couple reliable innings here and there, or he's showing you good stuff, I mean, to me, that's a hell of a lot more valuable than watching Ryan Stanek and Ryan Helsley going out there, which is, he's just short-haired Ryan Stanek, go out there, throw 40 pitch innings and barely be able to get 2 outs while surrendering like 2 to 3 runs.
I mean, Dylan Ross still has that same high arm angle that Ryan Helsley has. Like, that's the same thing, but he has a little bit more in his repertoire that would probably help you. And again, who knows if it will help, but again, you need somebody to deepen that pen, because you can't just walk a tightrope of, this guy's getting up, great. This guy's getting up, great. This guy's getting up, great. Like, nobody wants to go into the fact of, this is it. This is what we have. That's not a good position to be in September. Like, it isn't a good position, and they tried not to be in that position, but here we are. Here we are, once again, where we're like, who can we trust in this bullpen? Not many. Evan?
Just like last year. And the thing that none of us have said thus far about calling up Ross is it literally cannot get worse than what Stanek and Helsley are giving. No. Like, there is no possible way, especially with Helsley, like, you actually cannot be worse than what Helsley has been, unless you're Alex Carrillo, maybe. Like, that's really about it.
Carrillo was an indie ball pitcher. Ryan Helsley has had an established career. That's the thing. It's like, this was expected to be something, but if it's not working, it's not working. I don't know how many times they're going to do this, and all I can say is I'm going to really start to question the decision-making if I see him come in another 8th inning. Because, like, if he gets an outing of low leverage, then I'm like, okay, they took him out of the circle of trust. I don't know who said it, but the triangle... Yeah, the triangle of trust or whatever, like with three reliable relievers. But if we're being honest, it's not even a triangle. It's a relay at this point. Yeah, exactly. It's a I don't even know what we can call it. A relay. I don't know. Ricardo's saying, stop calling him Helsley, just call him Hell. Yeah, I mean, listen, Bells of Hell, I guess. Yeah, I can never hear. Yeah, I can never hear Hell's Bells the same. I don't want to hear that song ever again. I mean, we all knew that Narco cleared. Like that's my number one guy, but we all know it clears as of right now. This is exactly the evidence of that. Like, come on. I never want to hear Hell's Bells again. And we all know that, never mind, I'm not going to say that because that's going to set some people off. But anyways, As for some other pitching situations, we did have some news come about Kodai Senga. Obviously, we know that Brandon Sproat is set to make his minor league debut in Game 3 of this series coming up against the Reds, which we will get into as well. But we also know that Kodai Senga has been kind of put into this TBD bubble as of right now for the next 48 hours. We don't know what the decision is. It looks like likely they will be optioning him down to AAA. We know that since he came back from the injury, he is not, I mean, everything has been going wrong for him. Like nothing has been, nothing has been coming up good for him, not going deep into games. He hasn't been good. And it's very easy to say that he's been one of the biggest liabilities in the second half. And it's very easy. We can talk about Minaya, obviously a different situation, but Kodai Senga, when we expected him after the good first half he had before getting injured, we expected him to be a lot better, and we are just seeing every single thing go wrong for him. Now, I don't know what the best situation would be for him. They obviously need to get his consent to send him down, but I don't know what other options they have at this point because they already covered his spot. So I'm going to guess maybe they sent him down to AAA. Very weird situation from a guy who we saw as our best starter to start off the year. But Matt, I'll go to you, obviously. Senga, it's been very difficult, obviously, to get things consistently out of him because considering the accommodations you have to make for him. But would you say that it's best to just send him down to AAA and let him just figure this out? Or do you think there's another way they can look at it with, extra spots, I guess, on the roster right now in September? I don't know. I really don't know how they address this because it's a very fragile situation, a very different situation from the usual pitchers.
Yeah, I mean, listen, with the Senga thing, I mean, it's clear that ever since he's come back off the IL, he's been flat out terrible. And look, I think for me, there's two ways you can handle the Senga situation. Either one, he goes in the IL, because I think a part of it, I still don't think he's fully healthy. Or two, which I agree with, you let him go down to AAA and let him figure it out. Because even like we know from Senga that again, like he's said this multiple times through quotes throughout his short tenure of being a Met. He always talks about how he's a perfectionist, to where in order for him to pitch at the best possibility he can to, it's like every single thing needs to be perfect. And even the last start, he came out and he said, after he got beat up by the Marlins, and he said his body does not feel right. And that's something that we saw even, when the Mets kind of rushed him back a little bit for the playoffs, and we saw him kind of struggle a little bit against Philly. And then, when we saw him, get absolutely torched by the Dodgers in Game 1 of the NLCS, like at that point, we clearly saw that his mechanics were not to his full optimum point of view. And then he was still kind of not fully healthy at that point. So for me, it's like you can't afford to keep throwing him out there if those two, key points are currently, where they're at this point. So for me, like I said, go down to AAA, figure out, whatever's kind of up with the mechanics, try to work through that. And if you still are struggling down there, then it's clear that, okay, maybe he just needs to go on the IL and just, finish off the season, through injury, because his stuff is just flat out not good right now. Like we all know that Senga's number one pitch and his best pitch, the pitch that he gets the most swings and misses off is the forkball, the ghost fork. He's not getting any swings and misses on that. His fastball is struggling. His cutter hasn't been as good. He's hanging sweepers over the plate. So like I say, it's at a point right now where there's only really two things you can do with Senga, and keep throwing him out there on the mound at the major league level. It's just it's not sustainable, because he's going to go out there and he's going to keep on, getting torched and lit up start after start. And it's kind of like a thing like I know Evan brought this up during the post game where Senga got destroyed, and he was saying, is it an injury thing? Is it maybe that the league is starting to finally catch up and adjust to him? I agree with a little bit that I think the league is starting to kind of, adjust to him and get used to his stuff. I don't think that's fully it though, just because I don't believe you don't go from being a dominant starter and seeing him putting up the type of numbers that we saw him at the start of the year to being a totally, unpitchable pitcher. Like I think Senga was due for a little bit of a regression at some point. I don't believe though he's as bad as what he's showing right now. So I believe it's maybe a little bit of injury and a little bit of the fact that the guys and the league are starting to catch up to him. But yeah, to me, like I said, I would send him down to AAA just to see if he can get right.
Yeah, Evan, and such as like we said in that stretch since then, 5.9 earned run average ever since coming back from that injury, not going deep into games. I mean, he has had 9 outings, 39.2 innings that he has pitched. He's not going deep into games. We're not getting anything from any aspect from Kodai Senga as of right now, and it's been very, very concerning. But Evan, what are your thoughts on this? Do you agree that they should like just call it here, send him down to AAA, let him figure it out? Because I feel like we're in a time warp of every 5 days we're seeing the same thing over and over and over again, not going deep into games, bouncing pitches he shouldn't be bouncing. It's been bad all around since he's come back from the injured list.
The thing that also makes me think that this isn't just an injury thing is the fact that, I mean, there's multiple reasons. Number one, like, even early on in the year, I know he had the good ERA and everything, but there was a lot of stuff in there where if you looked at the underlying things, there were things that showed that it was not going to stick. It was not going to regress to this bad, but there were things that showed
so many base runners, so many.
Yeah.
Lots of base runners. Yeah.
It was unsustainable for him to continue to be as good as the ERA was. But, with that said, I also don't think it's an injury thing, because if it's an injury thing, then why is it that they're not just putting him on the IL right now and they're talking about sending him down to AAA? To me, it's pretty simple. If they had the opportunity to shut him down and say, you're going on the IL, we don't care, I think they would have done that by now. Instead, they're trying to ask for his consent to go down to AAA, which it sounds like he's being stubborn about, maybe based on what they're talking about.
It's in his contract, sure. I think it's in his contract. Yeah.
It's in his contract.
It's in his contract, but like, I'm also wondering, why it hasn't.
Why is it taking so long? Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by the way Mendoza was talking about it, he was kind of like, yeah, we're waiting on Senga to agree, but like, that's an option we're looking at, sort of thing. So it's like, is Senga being stubborn about it? If that's the case, I mean, that's going to be an interesting conversation in the offseason about him. And the other thing I'll say, just to disagree a little bit with what Matt was saying about him, with the league figuring him out and not being, he was so good, what happened, whatever. To me, it's just like, there's a reason a lot of teams weren't lining up to sign him. Like, the Dodgers are in on every Japanese player. Why were they not in on Senga then? To me, that says something as well. And a lot of it is the injuries, which was a concern when they signed him. And a lot of it is, there are underlying things when you look at his stuff that are simply not great. And now that teams, I think, are learning to lay off the forkball, and especially the Marlins, who did a good job of not chasing the forkball that in that game against him, which credit to the Marlins, I guess. But at the same time, it's like, this is becoming a league thing where the league is starting to figure out how to lay off the forkball, and he doesn't have the overpowering stuff to generate the outs otherwise. And, some of it also does fault, because I'm seeing people talk about how Hefner deserves blame. Hefner definitely deserves blame for a lot of different things. I don't know how much I could blame him for this, because a lot of it is just simply that he never had the great stuff. Again, there's a reason why it came down to them and the Padres really to get him.
Yeah. Obviously, listen, like that's more of just the mind of how Billy Epler likes to function. But again, looking back on that, but I do think that the injury concern was major, because he does have a Tommy John clause. Like, he does. Like, there is, and his physical did take a while, obviously. But again, there is a conversation that does have to be had in this offseason. I'm trying not to have it right now, because obviously there's so many things going on with this rotation. But it's basically become evident that, whether he was pitching well at the beginning of the season, still not dependable enough to go deep into the game. Still not dependable enough to be that legitimate ace that gives us a right in for 170, 180 innings this year. Just haven't seen it. We really haven't seen it, and it comes with a lot of limitations. He needs an extra day of rest. He needs, other things. He's talked about his perfection. I've kind of laid off of it because he was pitching well when he was out there, but when you're not, doing well with the accommodations in front of you, there's only so many things that they can do. There's only so many things that you can do where you're not like, okay, we need to merit sending him down to AAA and figuring something out.
And again, listen, I do agree with the fact to a certain point that the league has figured him out a little bit, and they've started to make adjustments to him. I don't think he's this bad as what he's showing right now. There's a better pitcher in Kodai Senga than what he's showing right now, and because I see like a lot of people are getting very frustrated with him, and rightly so. But because, we've obviously, heard the conversation over the past couple of years, that, Senga is, the ace of this rotation. He's the Mets' best pitcher. And I think, listen, technically he is the Mets' best pitcher, but I think that's more due to circumstance than him actually being a quote unquote ace. Because really, let's look at the facts and let's look at the context of Kodai Senga. Kodai Senga was signed back in 2023 to a 5-year deal to a $90 million deal. He's being paid $50 million a year. That is not ace money. That is more 3-4 depth pitcher money. And let's not forget, when the Mets signed him in 2023, he was supposed to be the number 3 starter behind Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander.
Yes.
So listen, I get that he's put up the incredible numbers, especially in his rookie season 2023, and obviously throughout 2024 last year, because that was just ruined through injury. And then he looked and put up good numbers back at the start of this year. But to me, I never viewed Senga as a quote unquote ace just by looking at the outside context and the fact that also the guy can't pitch on regular rest as well in terms of American Major League Baseball regular rest, because obviously back in Japan they consider regular rest 5 days. So to me, I can't consider you a true ace if you're not being able to go out there and pitch every 4 days. And the only way I could kind of maybe adjust to that is if, I could be fine and consider you an ace when you only pitch 5 days on regular rest, is if you're putting up, really good dominant stuff and you're actually considered like one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball. So to me, like, listen, I am frustrated with Senga, but to me, I never viewed him as that, quote unquote ace and that leader of this rotation. I think he's a good pitcher in what was supposed to be a circle of other very good pitchers.
Yeah, that definitely, I agree with that too. I've talked about it before, of saying that there's makings of an ace with Kodai Senga, with how he carries himself, how well he does with runners on base from the stretch, and his want to get better and his perfection. But there's no like true ace DNA, if you want to say that. Like there's still accommodations that have to be had. And I'm okay with those accommodations because I'm all for babying pitchers at this point, because we all know how pitchers just completely fall apart no matter what, whether it's health-wise or consistency-wise. But they're just, again, there's still things that needed to be accommodated. And again, could they be figuring him out? I don't know. One thing I will say is that he doesn't have the best fastball, never has had the best fastball, but he has been able to dial it up to some solid shape. Fastball velocity is noticeably down compared to what he had in his rookie year. He was at almost 96. He's below 95 this year in his fastball velocity. So again, it's not just that. We know that the forkball he's had trouble commanding as well. Rest of the pitches bridging over as well. Getting into full counts a lot. We know that if he commands the zone, he can be a very solid pitcher, and he could be a possible contributor on this team. Is he dependable? I don't think he is. I don't think he's dependable. I don't think he's been dependable. And that's the conversation I feel like we're eventually going to have about Kodai Senga of, yes, he has talent. Yes, he's better than this, but is he really worth it? I don't know if he is. I really don't know if he is worth it. And I've been patient with him after the rookie season he had in 2023. It was a lost season. It's whatever. But now this is year 3 of this contract now. And we're still seeing, like, I don't know, he's doing basically the same thing Clay Holmes has been doing. Just laboring through 5 innings and, running full counts, bringing his pitch count up. And we're doing that more for a guy who's been a starter for his entire career compared to somebody like Clay Holmes, who's doing this for the first year of his career. And that's the thing. I think there's makings of an ace, but a lot of things need to be put together for him to succeed. And it has been the complete opposite recently. It's just been really, really bad.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into deeper conversations in the offseason, but like I already know my answer about, if they have the opportunity in the offseason to move him. To me, it's not even a question because, I'm not sitting here. He's not demanding to be on extra rest, but it's the fact that he's not great enough on the extra rest, but you have to put him on extra rest because he's somehow even worse on regular rest. So
yes, exactly.
You literally cannot put him out there on regular rest, which was another thing that I questioned, where it's like, you have a chance to win the division here potentially. Why are you throwing him out there to begin with on regular rest? To me, that was also head scratching when they did that recently. So to me, like, I don't know, like, it's just such a headache to deal with, like some of the people are saying in the chat. And I don't sit here and fault him entirely for it. Like, some of it's out of his control. I don't fault him for the injuries. I don't fault him for the extra rest thing because he just simply needs it. But it is at the same time fair to say it's a headache to deal with, to where this team needs to reshape the rotation the offseason. We'll talk about that on a deeper level when it, comes down to it, to where I don't know if this is worth putting up with anymore.
Yeah, I don't know if it is either, especially when you have, some young guys that maybe you think could be contributing as well. 5-man rotation, whether it's the usage of the bullpen or not. I mean, Game for War saying it kind of a little bit jokingly here, but again, it makes sense. He's saying Google AI tells me that Senga has always been questionable for the MLB workload. Mets have catered and coddled him, and he still has failed. That's the thing. It's like he needs to pitch well in order for these accommodations to look good. But when we see that he's not pitching well under these accommodations, then it becomes a headache to deal with real quick. It really does. And like we've said, it's just the fact of, yes, if you want to give extra rest to a guy who's pitching as well as he is, like he was in 2020, like he was in 2023, or like he was for the first part of the season, that's fine. But again, it can change really, really quick if he's not being as effective, and he hasn't been effective ever since coming off the injured list. So we'll see what they do in AAA. It looks like most of you guys in the poll that we have set up here would say demote him to AAA, which, again, is something that I would obviously agree with. I don't know if Senga's being difficult about it, or there's they just have to kind of line it up with his days of rest for him to make the decision. I don't know. But he has said, anything to help the team, I will be able to do. So let's see if he's willing to do that. I wouldn't put it past him to just say, well, he just wants to stay here. He's going to refuse assignment like Matt Harvey ended up doing, and that was the reason why they shipped him out here. Like, I don't see that happening. But there is, oh my God, there is a point as to where a decision does have to be made about the future of him, and this is one of the main reasons as to why of what we've been seeing since he came off the IL. Now, obviously, we've been talking about individual performances probably this entire episode, this entire live stream, but I do want to wrap it up here, and that being with our signature segment that we have after every series, and that being, of course, Studs and Duds, which is one player in this series that was really, really good we want to give a shout out to, one player that was not. And also, we have some other guys that we can put in as well, if we have not mentioned, of things that they did in this series that, as for studs, obviously. Matt, I'll start it off with you of someone that you want to give the stud category for in this series, because they still did win this series, even though there's plenty to talk about.
I mean, for me, I'll probably just go with the easy Mark Williams layup right here, and it's got to be Juan Soto, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like we've talked about before. I mean, I don't think he's going to win the MVP just because I think Otani and Schwarber have kind of, have built up too much of a lead. But he's certainly making a late case for it. I mean, look, over this series, he was the best Mets hitter in my opinion. Obviously we saw him hit his first Grand Slam as a New York Met. He's been much more effective with runners in scoring position, still drawing loads of walks. I mean, even I believe in the second game of the series, he ended up starting 2 rallies. I believe the first one was a walk, and then the second one was either a home run or just a single. But yeah, I mean, the guy is, and obviously look, we all know that he had the not so great start to the season. Really struggled in March and really struggled in April. But the guy has really turned it on these last couple months, and he's making a case for why the Mets signed him to this big contract, and he's looking like he's worth every single penny right now that the Mets are paying him.
I mean, it's obviously hasn't been smooth sailing with him being here so far, but again, he's getting hot at the right time. So it's not like he's, putting this in garbage time. This team needs him, and he has been showing that he wants to be that guy, and you'd hope that it would carry on to the postseason, because if he does contribute, we all know what he can do. Like we said, this is a game-changing bat. This is a generational hitter at only 26 years old. So, Evan, I'll go to you. Obviously, Soto, great series, but there was some other good hitters as well. I don't think we're really going to go to the pitching as much for this one, but what are your thoughts?
I mean, there was a pitcher that I was considering, because to me there was 3 guys. Matt took one of them. I'm going to say Luis Torrens, though, for mine. Even though in the last game when he came in, he went 0 for 2, he still had a really good series. Obviously had that opposite field home run, and I know a lot of his hits were bloop hits, but still ended up being some big-time hits for them. And on top of that, the defense, once again, with, getting base runners out all the time, helping the pitchers out a little bit more when they're already struggling. So to me, and not only that, Wally's getting beat up badly back there as well. So I got to say Luis Torrens for the series.
Yeah, he had a really, really good series. And to be honest, he's been really, really good offensively since Alvarez ended up going down. Since then, let's give a little bit of a stretch here. He's batting 306, 342 on base percentage, 639 slugging, and he has a 171 weighted runs created plus. That is in 39 plate appearances that he has had since Alvarez ended up going down, which is good. Not going to sustain to anything, because he eventually will be the backup catcher if Francisco Alvarez ends up coming back, which it looks like you can't keep that man off the field, because it seems like you got to cut off every single one of his limbs to even for him to consider sitting out at this point. But again, that's been filling in the production very well, which has been very impressive. Obviously, hasn't been perfect. Will it stay? Probably not. But again, those little contributors, they definitely go a long way, and especially with Torrens, who oddly enough has more 3-run homers this year than Juan Soto. So that's interesting. Anyways, thanks for teeing it up. I thought somebody else would do it, but thanks for teeing it up. Jeff McNeil had a really, really good series. Obviously, he had some really, really big hits. I think that he put them ahead in game 1. I think game 1 or game 2, something like that. And he was definitely collecting in these situational games. And overall in this series, he went 6 for 13, which is, I mean, really good. I mean, for a guy like Jeff McNeil, that we expect what he's doing, line drive hitter, contact hitter, getting on base, things like that. He also stole a base. And the only thing that I want to say in critical, and I know that he's not a big base stealer anyway, but please, can we stop sliding head first? That's all I ask, please. It's not just the fact of what Alvarez did and how he hurt himself and that precaution. It's the fact that it's dumb. Please stop doing it. That would be very, very nice. But good series by Jeff McNeil, even though it's all fake. and he doesn't deserve any recognition. Sorry, got to keep character. Anyways, off to the dud category. I think that we all have a few in here that we all can pretty much agree with. You can piggyback if you want. Matt, I'll go right back to you. Dud for this series.
Yeah, I think for me, there's 3 clear options here. I'm not going to go with the obvious one just because I already went with Soto as the obvious one. To me, though, I'll go with Gregory Soto because Soto over these last couple series, he has not been good. He's not been, effective out of the bullpen, especially, whenever Mendoza puts him into these lefty situations. And I mean, even again, we saw in this third game where, he comes in after Clay Holmes exits after pitching 4 2/3, and all he has to do is get 1 out to get out of that 5th inning. And what does he do? Throws a wild pitch. Carpenter and Colt Keith end up moving up to second and third base, and then ends up giving up a base hit to Riley Green. He ends up driving in 2. Tigers go up 3-1. And look, maybe if Gregory Soto gets out of that inning without giving up a run, maybe the Mets do end up, winning that game. I know they only scored 2 runs in that game, but maybe the Tigers don't. Maybe the Tigers use their bullpen a different way. The Mets see a different kind of pitcher. The offense maybe tease him up a little bit more. And maybe the whole situation just ends up going different. The Mets end up sweeping the series. Obviously we don't know that because Soto comes in, like I said, gives up the 2 runs. But yeah, Gregory Soto has not been really effective at all. Ever since his first couple games that he came out of the bullpen for this Mets team.
Yeah, he had the matchup. I mean, Riley Green, who has been one of the worst hitters this year against lefties, ended up coming through against him. So again, that was his job to do it, and he wasn't able to do it. So again, I don't know. It's basically just about the execution. I don't know how many times we can say, bad move, bad managing, bad this, bad that. Someone's going to have to come through because there's been way too many of those types of performances. Evan, you got a dud for this series?
I'm not going to take the obvious one either because we just talked about Helsley for like 30 minutes here. For me, I'm going to go underratedly with Starling Marte. And the reason why is because how much that 0 for 4 was kind of like a big deal in that last game for why the Mets didn't win. Because he's going up there pretty much at every at-bat except for one with a runner on base. Didn't come through. Swinging first pitch on one of those at-bats, hitting into a double play. And the other swinging on the second pitch and hitting into a force out there to end the inning when the Mets had an opportunity to potentially rally late and potentially, maybe win one of those close games like we talked about earlier. So for me, it's him, and it's unfortunate because, he has been underratedly solid with runners in scoring position this year, and to see him just fail that much there, it was just very disappointing.
Yeah, he obviously only played 1 game, but that definitely one of the factors that prevented a sweep. But it's just Unk let us down. I guess that's what we got to say. He let us down. He has been very good overall, I will say. So I wouldn't beat on him too much, but it definitely was a deciding factor in the comparison from this being a sweep to it being a series win. One guy that also gets kind of swept under the rug here, who I don't think was good in this series at all. Francisco Lindor was not good at all in this series. Like it seemed like at the plate, he was just chasing a lot, whiffing at a lot of fastballs. It seems like he was down 0-2 a lot. He did steal a couple of bases, which, obviously still getting on base enough, I guess, to contribute. But I expected a little bit more from him, obviously. I know that he has a good career in Detroit. Obviously, that's more dated back to when he was in Cleveland, so who knows if that is more of a factor. But behind the Soto and Alonso and the great series that also Brandon Nimmo we can put out there, and McNeil and Torrens and all of these guys who had good series, Lindor was probably the worst one in that lineup. 1 for 15, or what is it? 1 for 13 with a walk or something like that. The whole series, it wasn't great. I'm not going to completely throw him under the bus because the offense still was going, but we know where Francisco Lindor goes, this team seems to go as well. So hopefully that doesn't continue to be a trend. We know that he's been fantastic beforehand with this stretch, ever since that long stretch that he wasn't hitting well. So hopefully he can get back into it in Cincinnati. But that's what I would say is some overall performances, studs or duds. Anybody else that you guys want to throw out in the ring, you can. Anybody else you want to shout out?
Yeah, first stud, I would say Noah McLean, since we didn't really talk about him a lot throughout this episode. Just for the fact that he did not have his best stuff in that start for the first few innings. And for him to just be composed out there and still give you 6 innings, 7 strikeouts, only allowing those 3 walks after he allowed, 2 of those walks in the first inning and didn't look great. And, credit to the offense, too, which gave him cushion to let him go back to the sweeper a little bit when he didn't have it early on in the game. So I do have to give credit to the offense for that. But for him to, rebound the way they did and look like what an ace would do, and also look like a veteran pitcher when your actual veterans aren't able to do that and make those in-game adjustments, it was nice to see Noah McLean go out there and be able to do that.
I was happy that first inning actually happened, because then we got to see what he got when he faced a little bit of adversity. Because, not everybody can be completely perfect and just coming out of the minor leagues, but obviously he's been great, and he was able to just shove throughout the entirety of the outing that he had. And also the fact that he has so many different weapons that he can go to is the main reason as to why he has that inner making of possibly this is a frontline arm. This could be an ace. Who knows? I'm not ready to put him in the Hall of Fame just yet. He's made 4 or 5 starts so far in the major leagues. But so far we have seen everything that has hit him so far has been very, very impressive, the way that he has handled it. So it's been very impressive. If there's anybody, Matt, you want to add anybody or anything?
Yeah, I mean, like with Evan said with McLean, I fully agree. Just because in those first 2 innings, we obviously saw he didn't have the greatest stuff. Made the small little adjustment, cut back on the sweeper curveball, went more fastball sinker line, and obviously as he got more comfortable, re-implemented the sweeper and the curveball, and he was able to give you 6 innings of 2-run ball. Another stud, got to be Kevin Herget, right? I mean, just eating innings, and again being a true soldier, like we always say with these call-ups. But then the other dud, I mean, I'm not going to throw in Helsley because he's the obvious one, but even then, first game, Sean Manaea, multiple times he was given big leads, and then
first pitch
to Jahmai Jones ends up hitting a home run out to left field. Yeah. But again, what was giving him multiple leads? I mean, after he gives up the home run to Jahmai Jones, Mets give him a 2-1 lead. He goes back out in the 3rd inning, gives up another 2-run home run, and then obviously, like I said, Soto ends up hitting the grand slam, and he ends up giving up 2 runs. The next half inning. So there was plenty of times, like I said, with Manaea, the Mets gave him a comfortable lead, but just wasn't able to hold that Tigers offense off the board whatsoever. And again, only gave you 4 innings of work, not even at that point.
Yeah, it's just, again, it's one of the guys that you can put on that list of, like we said, with Kodai Senga, Sean Manaea as well. They've been liabilities. They really have. I mean, it's very, that doesn't mean that we think that they're awful and their careers are over, but again, it has not been fun. They've been one of the main reasons as to why they have been losing games when they have been, whether they're playing well or not overall as a team. So either way, leaving everything behind that we saw over these past 72, 96 hours, let's move on to the, of course, series upcoming in Cincinnati, which it's not do or die, but there's definitely a chance where they can create some space between Cincinnati and possibly knock them completely out of this playoff race and put themselves in a better position going into Philly. This is a Cincinnati team that is pretty much a 500 team. They're not fantastic, but they do have talent on there, obviously, in the pitching department, which I will obviously get into right now with these probables for this upcoming series. Now, David Peterson will start the opener, looking to shake off one of the worst outings of his career last week. He'll face his fellow 2025 National League All-Star left-hander Andrew Abbott, who is pretty much a similar pitcher to him. First pitch is tomorrow night at 6:40 p.m. Eastern Time on SNY. In Game 2, Mets top pitching prospect Jonah Tong will make his second career MLB start following an impressive debut. He'll face the 29-year-old right-hander Brady Singer. First pitch is Saturday night, at 6:40 p.m. Eastern Time on SNY. And in Game 3, as we just got the announcement, Mets pitching prospect Brandon Sproat will make his Major League debut, and he will face the hard-throwing right-hander Hunter Green, who has been on a tear since he came back from the injured list. First pitch is Sunday afternoon at 1:40 p.m. Eastern Time on Pix 11. So, obviously, some interesting pitching matchups, a decent amount of youth too. Some young guys out there that are going to be on showcase. Obviously, we are excited to see what Brandon Sproat can do for us. Obviously, after a very up and down season in the minor leagues, and then Jonah Tong, of course, and then hopefully David Peterson can results man himself once again. But obviously, some things going into this team. Evan, I'll go to you first. Some things that you're looking out for, some things to run down about this Cincinnati team that has talent, but we know they have their weaknesses too. They're not the best, so it's a team they should beat. Will they? I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, I mean, just the build on pretty much what I've talked about all episode long. Like, to me, the thing that's going to tell me a lot is Sunday's game when they have to face Hunter Green, because I want to see what they could do against a really good starting pitcher in this league. Because the offense, they could show up against Abbott, who's having a good year, don't get me wrong, but he's not as good as Hunter Green. And they could show up against Brady Singer, who's not good. That's great. But I want to see what they do against Hunter Green, because you're going to face more of those type of pitchers come playoff time. And to me, that's going to tell me, everything I need to know about this offense, to where, are they just merchants of bad pitching, or are they actually going to do something that's sustainable come October?
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what the deal is with that. We've seen them beat up on aces this year, like beat them up a lot, and then we've also seen them get carved up by a lot of them. So that's another one of those 0 to 100. So it's possible. We'll see. Matt, what are you looking at going into this Reds series? 5 games in between these two teams.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously, the first point that Evan made, I fully agree. I want to see them go into that Sunday game, especially it's going to be nice to see Brandon Sproat also making his Major League debut. But I want to see them go in there, and I know, they've been hot over the last month or so, but I want to see them be able to hit Hunter Green. And, I'm not saying they have to beat him up and put up 10 runs. I'm not going to complain if they do, but I at least want to, see them go in there, make him struggle a little bit, have some good at-bats, and, put up 4 or 5 runs off of him. Because also for Brandon Sproat, because like I said, it's going to be his Major League debut, and I'm sure he's going to be there. There's going to be some nerves. I don't want to, have Brandon Sproat go up there and make him feel like, he has to be, pitch perfect every single pitch to try and keep this Mets offense in the game, because, they can't hit Hunter Green because, he's one of the better pitchers in Major League Baseball. But also, like, let's not forget, like, this series right here is important for many factors. Obviously, first of all, if the Mets go into Cincinnati and they win the series, you build up a little bit of a gap between you. So, like, if they go out and take 2 out of 3, which I hope, and that's my expectation, that they go in there and win this series, you build up that lead to 7 games. But also, let's not forget that a couple months ago, when the Mets last played the Reds took 2 out of 3 at Citi Field against the Mets. So the Mets, at minimum, need to go 2-1 here against Cincinnati to tie up the tiebreaker. Because then after that, the tiebreaker is better records against division. And Evan Roberts brought that up yesterday on the Rico Brony. And the Mets right now, they have the better division record against the NL East than the Reds do compared to the NL Central. So, and as we saw last year, the reason why the Mets got into the playoffs last year was because of a tiebreaker against the Arizona Diamondbacks. So these things do matter. So go in there, take care of business, win this series, and then obviously we'll go on from there against a tough series against the Phillies.
Yeah, obviously some top players that we can put a spotlight to. We know Ellie De La Cruz. There's immense talent in there, even though he has struggled for a majority of this series, still having a good season. They don't really have that many fantastic offensive weapons. TJ Friedl has had a solid year for them as well, but they do have a majority of these guys that are here are below average hitters. So I'm hoping that they treat them like that and attack them. That would be great. Jose Trevino can't hit. Spencer Steer has struggled a lot. Matt McClain has definitely struggled since coming back from injury. Jake Fraley is having a down year. The main guy that actually has been fantastic has been Novelli Marte. That's been their best hitter for the recent stretch that they have had. And then obviously we said with the bullpen, with the rotation, like we said, but with their bullpen, Emilio Pagan has kind of dropped off recently since getting his, nod to be their closer. Obviously, Brent Suter has had a rough season as well. Scott Barlow has had a good season for them out of that pen. That's been somebody that's been linked to the Mets before. We know that Graham Ashcraft as well has had a decent season out of that bullpen. Nothing too fancy, but again, guys that can definitely take you out. Like you just said, that last Cincinnati Reds series, I actually was in attendance for that only win that they had in that series. The what was it? The series finale out there, and they barely scored. I mean, the offense was definitely very, very cold in that. I don't remember who was pitching in that,
it was
but
Peterson.
It's obviously going to be a little bit different.
Peterson, because he got somewhat of a thing
Was
for
it-
him. Yeah, you got to think for him. So it was him.
Yeah.
Because we were at the game
I
before.
had double
and-
Peterson.
Yeah, because we were at the
Yeah.
game before, me and Evan, and that was the David Wright retirement day, and Clay Holmes pitched that day.
Okay. All right.
You love
Interesting.
watching those hips in person. I respect it.
Yeah, exactly. They don't lie. Let's hope they're better. Let's hope they're better in game 1 tomorrow. That would be fantastic. But yeah, again, you need to win this series to get that tiebreaker on them. A sweep would be fantastic because that would probably bury this Cincinnati team in a position where they're probably not going to make it. We know that San Francisco has overtaken them for the the final spot out. San Francisco obviously has played some really good baseball since the trade deadline. We know that people have been raving about Drew Gilbert playing well this past week, and Jose Budo's the next, Mariano Rivera now. But again, we'll see how they do against this Reds team that I think they're good enough to beat. They're 100% good enough to beat. But this Reds team also is good enough as to where they can give us fits. I'm not going to sit here and say this is something that we need to do. This is half and half as to, just like the Mets, you don't know what team you're going to get. You don't know what team you're going to get on the field. And that has kind of been what the Reds are. These are kind of two teams that are in the similar situations of year in totality of how inconsistent they have been. So you're hoping we get it on a good day, but who the hell knows? Who the hell knows at this point? But they have an opportunity to bury this Reds team and then also go into Philadelphia for a very crucial series that will likely determine what's going to be likely determine what direction this division is going to go. So we'll see. We will see. Hopefully the Mets don't make it worse for themselves. We've seen them do it before. But last thing before we go here, some players to watch, obviously on the Mets side, as we did the rundown of this Reds team. Some players to watch, some players that you're putting a spotlight on. Matt, I'll go to you first. What do you think? Who are you looking out for? Either on numbers or vibes, doesn't really matter.
I mean, obviously, I think on the Mets side, obviously, looking at all the starting pitchers the Mets have lined up, I think those are the guys that I'm really interested to see because obviously, like I said, Sproat's making his major league debut. Obviously, want to see how he pitches. Tong, obviously, making his second start. I think nerves and kind of the situation affected him a little bit in that first start. So interested to see how he looks. And also, David Peterson obviously got roughed up in that last start against the Marlins, gave up 9 runs or 8 runs, whatever it was, but it was bad either way. So hope to see him, rebound to what he's been showing, before and what we saw more from him earlier in this year where he's giving you, 2 to 3 runs of baseball and, he's giving you 6 to 7 innings of work. And obviously for the Reds, I think the main guy, Ellie De La Cruz, and also, Hunter Green on the pitching side. But I will say this also, hopefully the Mets go into the series and at minimum, I'm asking for 2 out of 3 win this series. But if at any point in this series I see Ryan Helsley come up against Ellie De La Cruz, unless the Mets are up by 10 runs, I'm shutting off my TV. I am not watching that at that.
TV off. Yeah. Evan, if there's anybody else you want to put into the guys you're putting a spotlight on?
My main one is really just David Peterson. Like, I need to see a bounce back performance because it was really inexcusable his last outing, and he hasn't been good enough as of lately. Like, blowing that 6-run lead against the Braves as well was just completely inexcusable. And if he's going to make playoff starts, these are the kind of games he needs to thrive in. It's just that simple, because last year he was not making those starts. This year, because of the fact that everyone else sucks so much, he might be. So I really want to see him step up. And then, as for the Reds, it's really still just Hunter Green, like I highlighted before. And I just want to see this offense be able to hopefully not necessarily carve him up, because, I'm not expecting that, but at least beat him up a little bit and show me something.
Yeah, I believe this is one of the highest ground ball rate teams in the league. So David Peterson, yes. Oh, yes. They're one of the highest ground ball rate teams in the league. So David Peterson, the keys are yours. You're going to have to figure this out. Either way, I also, obviously, this more has to do with Ellie De La Cruz and the athleticism of this team. I'm still going to direct it to Luis Torrens, because having his arm behind the plate is going to be definitely a factor, especially with young guys like Tong and Sproat on the mound. He's definitely going to have to make up for, some stuff from the stretch, obviously. And then if you're talking about this offensively, I know Brandon Nimmo has a really good career in this ballpark. So we'll see what he can do as well. And then, of course, it's all down to the offense. I mean, this is a bandbox. This is a hitter's ballpark. So, we should see. We'll see. We should. Who knows? But we should see some good offensive performances from this team in this ballpark, and hopefully they can keep it going, obviously. But as for everything else, I think we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you to Evan and Matt from the Mets Central Podcast for joining us for this episode of our show. Other than that, we are going to wrap it up. Thank you guys so much for watching. Yep. We hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. For those of you watching or listening on playback, you want to join the conversation live in the future, make sure to subscribe to the Mets Weekly YouTube channel. Turn on those post notifications to know when we go live. Make sure to follow Mets Weekly on X and on TikTok. Follow all of us individually. The links are in the description for Evan and Matt. Make sure to go check out their show as well. They do, similar to us, they do episodes after every series as well. They do some post games. So make sure to go check that out. And like we said, keep it going. They're in a good spot. Eyes on the prize. Don't lose focus, please, just because the team doesn't have a record over 500. That's all I ask. Anyways, let's go Mets, and we will see you guys next time.